The Little Tree. Once upon a time, in a dense forest far away, there lived a little Christmas tree. The tree was small and had only a few branches, but it had a big dreams of becoming the most beautiful tree in the forest. Every year, the other trees in the forest were chosen to be decorated for Christmas, but the little tree was always left behind because it was too small. The little tree felt sad and left out every year, watching as the other trees were adorned with beautiful lights, ornaments, and garlands. It longed to be chosen too, to be made beautiful and appreciated like the other trees. One day, as the little tree was basking in the warm sunlight, a group of animals came to the forest looking for a tree to decorate for their Christmas celebration. They were a group of squirrels, rabbits, and birds who wanted to have a special Christmas party in the forest. When they saw the little tree, they knew it was perfect. The animals gathered around the tree and began to decorate it with homemade ornaments and garlands. They strung popcorn and berries together, hanging shiny bubbles from its branches, and wrapped it in a colorful ribbons. The little tree felt so happy and laughed as it watched the animals work tirelessly to make it look beautiful. It felt like it had finally been chosen and appreciated like the other trees. As the sun began to set and the moon rose high in the sky, the animals lit up the little tree with twinkling lights. The tree sparkled like a diamond in the night sky, and the animals danced around it in joy. The little tree realized that being small didn't mean it couldn't be special and beautiful. It had been chosen by the animals because of its unique qualities and charm. It had brought joy to the animals and Christmas celebration, and had become a symbol of hope and love in the forest. From that day on, the little tree felt proud of who it was and the role it played in the forest. It knew that it didn't need to be big or grand to be special, that its small size was what made it unique and beautiful. The little tree continued to grow every year, but it never forgot the lesson it had learned. It remained humble and grateful, always appreciating the love and kindness that surrounded it. And every Christmas, the animals returned to decorate it once again, making it the most beautiful tree in the forest. The Snow Queen. Once upon a time, in a far-off land, there lived a beautiful and kind-hearted girl named Greta. She lived with her parents in a small village where everyone knew each other and celebrated Christmas with great joy. On winter, a strange and powerful snowstorm hit the village. The snow was so thick that it covered everything inside, and the villagers were unable to leave their homes. Greta's parents went out to check on their animals, but they never returned. Days passed, and Greta grew more and more worried about her parents. She decided to venture out into the snowstorm to look for them. As she walked through the thick snow, she heard a voice calling out to her. Greta followed the voice and soon found herself in front of a magnificent ice palace. The palace was so beautiful that it took her breath away. She approached the entrance and knocked on the door. To her surprise, the door opened on its own and she stepped inside. The palace was filled with glittering ice sculptures, and at the corner of the room sat a beautiful woman dressed in white furs. It was the Snow Queen. The Snow Queen welcomed Greta and offered her a warm meal and a place to rest. Greta told her about her missing parents, and the Snow Queen promised to help her find them. The Snow Queen gave Greta a magical cloak that would protect her from the cold and send her on her way. Greta traveled through forests and over mountains, meeting many interesting characters along the way. She met a talking reindeer who offered to take her to the Snow Queen's palace. She met a group of friendly robbers who gave her shelter and food. She even met a wise old woman who gave her advice on how to defeat the Snow Queen. Finally, Greta arrived at the Snow Queen's palace, where she found her parents frozen in ice. She pleaded with the Snow Queen to release them, but the Snow Queen refused. Determined to save her parents, Greta used her wit and bravery to outsmart the Snow Queen. She tricked her into looking into a magic mirror, which shattered into a million pieces and freed the Snow Queen from her icy grip. The Snow Queen was so grateful to Greta that she released her parents and promised to never harm anyone again. Greta and her family returned home, where they celebrated Christmas with even more joy and happiness than before. From that day on, Greta was known as the bravest girl in the village, and everyone looked up to her with admiration. And every winter, when the snow started falling, they would remember the tale of Greta and the Snow Queen, and be reminded of the power of love and bravery. Magical Tree. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Emma who loved to play in the forest near her house. She would spend hours exploring the woods, climbing trees, and collecting pine cones and acorns. One day, as she was wandering through the forest, she stumbled upon a small Christmas tree. The tree was unlike any other tree in the forest. It was small and had only a few branches, but it had a special spark to it that caught Emma's eye. She decided to take the tree home with her and make it her own. Emma brought the tree back to her house and placed it in her bedroom. She decorated it with homemade ornaments and garlands, and even strung popcorn and berries together to hang from its branches. The little tree looked beautiful, and Emma felt proud of what she had created. As Christmas approached, Emma's family began to decorate their own tree in the living room, It was big and grand with a lot of lights and ornaments and tinsels. When Emma's parents saw her little tree in her bedroom, they smiled but didn't think much of it. On Christmas Eve, Emma went to bed early, excited for Santa Claus to come and bring her presents. As she lay in bed, she heard a soft rustling sound coming from her bedroom. She sat up and saw that her little tree was glowing with bright light. Emma rubbed her eyes in disbelief and watched as the tree began to grow taller and taller. Its branches spread out, and it became the most beautiful tree Emma had ever seen. The tree had transformed into a magical Christmas tree. Suddenly, the room filled with music, and a group of elves appeared out of nowhere. They were dressed in a green and red clothes and carried sacks full of presents. The elves told Emma that they had come to visit her because of her special little tree. They said that the tree had a unique sparkle to it that had caught their attention, and they wanted to reward Emma for her creativity and imagination. The elves gave Emma a special present, a magical snow globe that would transport her to any place she wished. They also left presents under her little tree, which had now become the centerpiece of her bedroom. Emma felt overwhelmed with joy and gratitude. She hugged the elves and thanked them for their kindness. As they disappeared into thin air, Emma crawled back into bed feeling warm and cozy. The next morning, Emma woke up to find her little tree back in its original form, but she knew that it was no ordinary tree. It was a magical Christmas tree that had brought her joy and happiness on a Christmas Eve. From that day on, Emma cherished her little tree even more. She knew that it was special and unique, just like her. And every year, as she decorated it with homemade ornaments and garlands, she felt grateful for the magic and wonder that the little tree had brought into her life. As Emma grew older, she never forgot about her magical Christmas tree. In fact, she passed down the tradition of decorating a small tree to her own children. And every year, as they decorated their own little trees, they felt the same sense of wonder and magic that Emma had felt all those years ago. Run, Gingerbread. Once upon a time, there was a little old woman who lived in a cozy cottage in the woods. She was known for her delicious baked goods and often spent her days baking cookies and cakes. One day, she decided to bake some gingerbread cookies. She mixed the dough, rolled it out, and used a gingerbread man cookie cutter to make the shapes. She decorated each cookies with icing and candy, making each one unique. As soon as she puts the gingerbread man in the oven, something strange happened. The little gingerbread man jumped up from the baking tray and ran out of the cottage, leaving the little old woman in shock. The little old woman chased after him, But the gingerbread man was too fast. He ran past a cow, a horse, and a pig, who all tried to catch him, but he was too quick. As he ran, he shouted, "Run! Run as fast as you can! You can't catch me! I am the gingerbread man!" The gingerbread man was feeling quite proud of himself when he came to a river. He didn't know how to cross it, and he didn't even want to get his feet wet. A stray fox saw the gingerbread man and offered to help him cross the river. The gingerbread man was weary, but the fox promised not to eat him. The gingerbread man hopped onto the fox's back and they started to cross the river. Halfway across the river, the fox suddenly snapped his jaws and ate up the gingerbread man. The little old woman was heartbroken when she heard what happened to her gingerbread man. She realized that not everyone could be trusted, even on Christmas. For that day on, she continued to bake delicious gingerbread cookies, but she never made a gingerbread man again. She always remembered the lessons she learned about trust and betrayal. Nutcracker and the Mouse King. Once upon a time, in a grand castle, there lived a young girl named Clara. She loved Christmas more than anything and eagerly anticipated the annual Christmas party hosted by her parents. This year, her godfather Drosselmeyer, a toy maker, brought a special gift for Clara, a beautiful nutcracker doll. Clara was thrilled with her gift and spent hours playing with the nutcracker. However, as the clock struck midnight, strange things began to happen. The toys in the room came to life, and the nutcracker grew to a life size. Suddenly, a swarm of mice appeared, led by their fierce king, who declared war on the toys. The nutcracker bravely fought against the Mouse King, but he was no match for the cunning rodent. Just as the Mouse King was about to deliver the final blow, Clara threw her slippers at him, distracting him long enough for the nutcracker to strike the winning blow. Grateful for Clara's help, the nutcracker took her on a magical journey through the land of sweets. They visited the sugar plum fairy and her court of sweets, danced with snowflakes and flowers, and even met Mother Ginger and her children. However, their joyous adventure was cut short when they discovered that the Mouse King had not been defeated after all. He had enlisted the help of his army of mice to invade the land of sweets and take over. Determined to save their new friends, Clara and the nutcracker rallied an army of toys, led them into battle against the Mouse King's army. After a long and grueling fight, they emerged victorious. Overwhelmed with gratitude, the sugar plum fairy crowned Clara as the queen of the land of sweets. The nutcracker was transformed back into his doll form, with Clara returned home with memories of her magical adventure. From that day on, Clara cherished her nutcracker even more and always remembered the magical journey they had shared. And every Christmas, she would look up the stars and wondered if her adventure was just a dream or if it was real. The Snowman. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled among the rolling hills and snow-capped mountains, there lived a group of children who eagerly awaited the arrival of winter every year. They loved nothing more than to spend their days outside building snowmen and having snowball fights until their fingers and toes were numb. One winter, as the snow began to fall softly from the sky, the children eagerly donned their warmest coats and mittens and set out to build the biggest and the best snowman they had ever created. They rolled snowballs across the ground, piling them on top of each other until they had created a towering figure that stood tall and proud in the center of the village square. As they stood back to admire their handwork, one of the children noticed something strange lying in the snow nearby. It was an old top hat, black and battered with age, but still looking surprisingly elegant against the backdrop of white snow. The children gathered around it, wondering where it had come from and who it might belong to. One of the children picked up the hat and, on a whim, placed it on top of the snowman's head. To their amazement, something magical happened. The snowman's eyes suddenly opened wide. His mouth curved upward into a smile, and he began to move. The children were stunned. They had never seen anything like it before. The snowman was alive. He looked around at his surroundings and taking in the village and the people who lived there with wonder and amazement. The children were overjoyed to have a new friend, and they spent the day playing and laughing with him. They named him Frosty, after the frosty winter weather that had brought him to life and showed him all around the village. Frosty loved his new life and was grateful for the children who had brought him to life. He spent his days playing with the children, sliding down hills and having snowball fights. He even helped them build more snowmen and decorate the village with icicles and snowflakes. The children were thrilled to have such a playful and imaginative friend, and they looked forward to spending every winter with him. But as the days went by, the weather began to warm up. The sun shone brighter and the snow began to melt away. The children watched in horror as Frosty began to shrink and melt before their eyes. They knew that he couldn't survive in the warm weather for much longer. The children were heartbroken at the thought of losing their dear friend, and they knew they had to do something to save him. They decided to take him on an adventure to the North Pole, where he could live forever in the cold. Together, Frosty and the children set out on a wild adventure through the snowy landscape. They faced many challenges along the way, including a pack of hungry wolves and a treacherous blizzard. But through it all, they stuck together and kept their spirits high. They traveled across frozen lakes and through dense forests, always pushing forward toward their goal. Along the way, they meet many interesting characters, including a friendly reindeer who helped and guide them through the snow, and a group of mischievous elves who offered them warm cup of cocoa and gingerbread cookie. Finally, after many days of traveling, they arrived at the North Pole. Frosty was overjoyed to see his new home and thanked the children for their kindness and bravery. He promised to always remember them and to watch over them from afar. The children returned home, filled with memories of their incredible adventure with Frosty the Snowman. They knew that even though he was gone, his spirit would live on forever in their hearts, and every winter, when the snow began to fall once again, they would gather together to build a new snowman in honor of their dear friend Frosty, who had brought them so much joy and wonder. Years went by, and the children grew up and moved away from the village. But they never forget about Frosty and the magical winter they had spent with him. They would often think back on their adventure and smile, remembering the joy and wonder that Frosty had brought into their lives. And every winter, when the snow began to fall once again, they would return to the village to build a new snowman in honor of their dear friend. They would decorate him with icicles and snowflakes just like Frosty had taught them. And they would remember the magic of that winter long ago. Christmas. Once upon a time, in a small village on the outskirts of bustling city, there lived a little girl named Maya. She was known as a little match girl because she sold matches to earn a living for her family. Her father was a poor man who struggled to make ends meet, and her mother had passed away when she was young. One winter evening, Maya was walking through the cold streets trying to sell her matches. She had not sold a single match all day, and her fingers were numb from the cold. As she walked, she saw families gathered around warm fires, enjoying Christmas dinner and exchanging gifts. She wished she could be part of it all. Suddenly, she saw a bright light shining in the distance. She followed the light until she reached a small alleyway. There, she saw a beautiful angel standing before her. The angel smiled at her and said, "Maya, I am here to show you the true meaning of Christmas." The angel then took Maya on a magical journey through time. They traveled back to the first Christmas, where they saw Mary and Joseph in the manger with baby Jesus. They saw the three wise men bringing gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. They saw the angels singing praises to God. Next, they traveled to different parts of the world and saw how people celebrated Christmas in different ways. In one country, they saw children leaving out shoes for Santa Claus to fill with presents. In another country, they saw people lighting candles and singing carols. Finally, the angel brought Maya back to the present day. Maya felt warm inside, despite the cold outside. She realized that Christmas was not just about receiving gifts, but also about giving and spreading joy and love. As Maya walked through the streets once again, she saw a homeless man shivering in the cold. Remembering the lesson she had learned from the angel, she took out a match and lit it. The flame illuminated the man's face, and she saw a smile spread across his face. She lit another match, and then another, until she had used up all the matches. But instead of feeling cold and alone, Maya felt warm and happy inside. She knew that the true meaning of Christmas was not about material possession, but about spreading love and kindness to those in need. The next day, Maya woke up to find that her father had sold all his matches and had enough money to buy food for their family. They sat down together and enjoyed a warm Christmas meal, grateful for the blessing they had received. From that day on, Maya became known as the little match girl who brought warmth and light to those around her. Her story became legendary, and people remembered her kindness every Christmas. And every year, when the snow fell and the lights twinkled, they were reminded of the magic of Christmas and the power of love and generosity.